Anyways, guys, Jeff Fink is here. Very excited to have him on. What a Hockey Podcast. We're going to break down Stanley Cup Playoffs and a bunch of other stuff. So very excited to welcome Jeff to the show. Jeff, how you doing, man?
What's up, Tanner? I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, I could be better. I could be better if the Bruins would have showed up a little bit last night. But, it is what it is. Now, you're a Stars guy, so hopefully you have better luck tonight than I had last night.
Yeah. First and foremost, thanks for having me on. Secondly, if we're talking anything betting-wise, that's the series you're going to want to bet the under every time. Calgary and Dallas is just super defense-heavy. But, yeah, I'm hoping we can pull one out. I think you and I chatted a little bit. I felt a lot better when I saw the Nashville score of Game 1, them getting absolutely demolished, and the Stars only losing by a goal, which is kind of their calling card. The Stars are, if I remember correctly, probably leading the NHL in one-goal games, victories and defeats. So, definitely going to be taking the under on them, but just excited to watch more hockey tonight.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny, and we were talking like hockey. I love hockey. It's not my favorite sport to watch out of all of them, but when playoffs roll around, everyone becomes a massive hockey fan for sure. Now, I got a question for you right away. Before we even get into hockey, I got to ask you, what's the What a Hockey name podcast? Where did that come from? I imagine something with Whataburger, but again, I'm in the Northeast, so that's nowhere near me.
Yeah, so you hit the nail right on the head. Me and a couple of buddies who used to write for a website before COVID destroyed it, which I think they bounced back. Good for them. Don't even remember the name of it. Doesn't matter. Irrelevant. Recruited those guys, but they're a couple of locals here in Dallas as well, as I'm in Dallas too. So we've been at it for about a year and a half. But, yeah, we're all huge Texas hockey fans. Whatahockey was born because we were like, what are the two things that we love the most? Whataburger and hockey. Let's just put them together and then spread the good news that there's a ton of hockey to be had down here in the South, specifically in Texas. And we've just been working on that for about a year and a half now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I got to get down. When I get to Dallas, I got to go enjoy a Whataburger. I don't even know how to say it, but I wish we had them up in the Northeast for sure.
We will definitely we'll baptize you properly with all the white gravy, spicy ketchup, and Whataburger you can have.
There you go. I love that. So I want to recap yesterday real quick before we start talking about today and then the overall landscape of the playoffs. But, Bruins didn't show up last night. Real quick, I know I'm a Bruins fan, so this might be a homer question here, but does this team have any chance of winning one game against Carolina in this series? Because they haven't beat them yet this year.
I will say, and obviously this is going to be different because the Stanley Cup is one of, if not the most difficult trophies to win in all of sports. It is very, very rare. Outside of the Penguins and the Tampa Bay Lightning here recently, it is almost impossible to repeat. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this season. But I will say, if there is one team in my mind that could make a run and come back from a 2-0 deficit, it's Boston. We've seen it before. Prime example was against the Maple Leafs, where they came back and stormed back in Game 7, one of the most famous calls of all time. So there's a lot of fight left in this team. When you've got guys like Brad Marchand still with the franchise, Patrice Bergeron, you've got a lot of veterans that have been in this position before and are not afraid to go in the locker room and probably say, hey, listen, buckle up, boys, because this is a 2-0 series. We're not down. We're not out. They still have to win 2 more. And we're going back to Boston. I mean, that is if there are any arenas in the NHL that can turn the tide by the fans alone, the TD Garden in Boston is definitely one of them. So don't count them out yet. I will say if Carolina can steal 1 of 2 in Boston, then you can sort of start panicking a little bit. But Boston is a rascally franchise, and they've known how to bounce back. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in these next 2 games.
Yeah, 100%. I think bookmakers give Boston so much respect in the playoffs. Like the way it looked yesterday, they shouldn't have been plus 100. They should have been more like plus 160, plus 170. But like you said, TD Garden, riot kind of place. Like it's going to be loud there. They got a chance to do something, especially with that core with Bergeron and Marchand and Pasternak and all that. Now, I want to talk about this series because this is the most entertaining series of the whole playoffs so far. Lightning and then the Leafs, right? Andrei Vasilevskiy, unbelievable game last night. Still undefeated after a loss in the playoffs. So I hammered Tampa Bay last night. Who do you have in the series overall? Because right now, it's definitely a toss-up.
So if you looked at all of my brackets that I've done throughout this entirety of the leading up to the Stanley Cup playoffs, I've hammered the Leafs in almost every single one of them. Now, that's not to say Vasilevskiy can literally do what he did last night and steal a series by himself. As a Stars fan, we don't have any short-term memory loss, so we remember playing against Vasilevsky in the playoffs, in the Stanley Cup bubble, and losing ultimately in 6 games. So it's going to be really tough for the Leafs to pull this one out. Obviously this is a betting heavy show. So I will say bet the over every time, because you are not going to be disappointed, even though Vasilevsky is one of the best, if not the best goaltender in the world. He will allow goals because, let's be honest, the Maple Leafs are one of the most potent teams in the last probably 15, 20 years, but they are the Maple Leafs. So it's very, very difficult for me to sit here and say I have full faith that the Maple Leafs are going to advance to the second round because, if you have lived under a rock in the hockey world, you know that the Maple Leafs, it doesn't matter who they play in the first round. The first round alone is their biggest villain, their biggest enemy. So it'll be interesting. I really think Maple Leafs will pull this out in 7 games. I think Tampa Bay is going to give them everything. Tampa Bay just has so many Stanley Cup caliber guys that have returned and guys that you don't even think about talking about. Pat Maroon, Corey Perry, prime example. Look what happened. Corey Perry was with the Stars. They went to the Stanley Cup final. Then he went to the Canadiens. They went to the Stanley Cup final. Now he's with Tampa Bay, who's been in the Stanley Cup final for the past 2 seasons. He is a difference maker because he is a locker room presence, a veteran, and he's someone like a Brad Marchand that can get into your head and live there rent-free for the entirety of the series that you're playing against him. So it's going to be really interesting. I hope for all of hockey it goes 7 games regardless of who takes it and goes into the second round. But this is very reminiscent of the series. I think it was last year with the Panthers and the Lightning, where they just basically beat each other into a bloody pulp. And it was the most entertaining series in the NHL playoffs last year. So, yeah, definitely going to be interesting. I think the Maple Leafs take it in 7. I hope I'm right, just because I've got a personal qualm with the Lightning, and I think a little bit of storyline and notoriety will be good if the Lightning get bumped out. So, yeah, Leafs in 7. I want to say quote me, but I'm afraid people will come for me in the comments afterwards.
Nah, you're good. The people are pretty good here. But yeah, I think like NHL playoffs all about star power, right? We saw in game 1 that series, Austin Matthews stepped up. And then for the Wild, on the other hand, when we look at the Blues and Wild series, Kirill Kaprizov was non-existent in game 1. He comes together last night. He has an unbelievable game, right? And they roll over the Blues. I have the Blues as my one upset pick in the first round. Like, they are my favorite team against the Wild, quite frankly, that don't really play defense, in my opinion, especially when they get down. Now, are you on the Wild or are you on the Blues train?
This one was tough because I will say after game 1, I thought, wow, the Wild are in a little bit of a pickle. The Wild have kind of had that monkey on their back of not playing good playoff hockey when they do make it into the playoffs. So, but they're really all in. Bill Guerin, their GM, has basically said, I don't care about anything after this season. It comes down to this season. And what I mean by that is, the Stars benefited because we have Ryan Suter. Some fans won't say we benefited, but we have Ryan Suter and Zach Parise. They are gone off the books because they bought them out. So after this season, they're going to be in cap hell for a very, very long time paying off those contracts. So it'll be interesting to see what happens after this season. But that being said, it would not surprise me if the Wild pull this one out. You've got Cam Talbot and Marc-Andre Fleury. Cam Talbot, this is the most interesting story to me in the playoffs right now. Finished the season, I want to say around 11 or 13-0. So he came in to the postseason hot. But when you've got a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, who has won the Stanley Cup and the Vezina Trophy a number of times, he's one of the most likable guys in the game, in the sport. It's hard to go against that. You obviously gave up a lot to get him in Minnesota. And so now you have him, and it's obviously the point of why you have him is where you're at. So, the Blues are an interesting team. They're always around. They always seem to find themselves in a playoff position. But look for the Minnesota Wild to take this one in 6, I believe. I think they're going to take the momentum from last night. They're going to go into St. Louis. They're going to win at least one of two of those games. And then they're going to continue to roll on to the next round. I really, really think, with guys like Kaprizov kind of lighting up a little bit, Zuccarello with the veteran presence, it's going to be an interesting series, but I'm thinking 6 games is all it's going to take for the Wild to go to the next round.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see the Blues do it because, like I said, I got a future bet on the Blues to win this series ultimately, but we will see what happens there. Now, we had Edmonton and LA. I think this is going to be a good series, but the people on TikTok are looking for the pick. So unless you have something big to say about this series, first of all, what's your brief take on that? And then we'll move into today's games.
Oilers in 5. I think the Kings surprised a lot of people in that first game. but you've got arguably the two best players in the world. If they can just play a little bit of defense for the next couple of games, I think they take the momentum from last night and they just cruise on to the next round. I think 5 games is all it's going to take. I think they're about to go on a mini streak these next 3 games. This is going to probably rub a lot of the Oilers fans the wrong way, but I'm just tired of seeing Connor McDavid and Draisaitl lose the best seasons of their career with a franchise who won't go and get a true goaltender. No offense, Mike Smith, but his record shows he's not a true Stanley Cup goaltender. So this round, I see them getting past the Kings. The Kings are going to put up a fight, but ultimately with those guys on their team, it's going to be really, really hard to keep up with their offensive momentum.
Yeah, 100%. When it comes down to that team, they need to score goals. If they're not doing it, they're going to have a tough time. Got some comments rolling in here. YouTube Wilcox, another great show. Appreciate that, guys. We're going to start breaking down picks, guys. If you're watching on TikTok right now, let's get those likes up. 2.1 thousand. Me and Jeff working hard over here. Let's get the likes up, guys. Ask him questions. Drop them in the chat, and we will get to them all. So we're going to start with Pittsburgh and New York. Now, I legitimately thought there would be bodies laying on the ice the other night at the Garden after what we saw. I mean, 3 overtimes. That was just – I had the Rangers. It didn't work out in my favor, right? But that was just impressive to watch those guys go, an extra what probably ended up being, 40, 45 minutes of hockey?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so beautiful about the playoffs is just, I think it was Columbus and I want to say Minnesota or Tampa, I can't remember off the top of my head, that had like a wild 5-game overtime. And you essentially are playing 2 full games back to back. It just shows the grit and the grind that goes into these games. So, but that's what playoff hockey is all about. So I was beyond entertained by that. But yeah, I'm with you. There's been some sketchy officiating, not just in this series, but every single one of the series, it seems like. I just wish the officiating crews would realize no one's tuning in to watch them officiate games. This is the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't care what player safety says. Let the boys play. I mean, there's a code of ethics that are, unspoken between players. Let them figure it out. And I think they will. So, what do you have on this one out of curiosity for the series?
So the series, I have New York to win the series. I think they're better on defense, and that's ultimately gonna get the job done for them. But like tonight, I don't have any specific action in this game. I might do the Rangers in a parlay just because the price at -160 is a little high. Now I'm like questioning the total, right? I think it's gonna go over 5.5. But at the same time, like I'm looking at what happened in game 1, right? I think the legs might be a little tired, might stay under for a +100 for positive odds there. That's kind of appealing to me. What's your take on the total?
Man, that's a tough one. I always in the playoffs say bet the over, just because with it's just such a different game. I mean, these guys realize that they have a 1 in, even in the NHL, a 1 in 32 or 3,200 shot to get to the Stanley Cup Finals and win the cup. So you're going to see a lot of stuff that you normally wouldn't see in the regular season. But it's all bets are off, no pun intended. So I always heavily favor the over. With the exception of that Calgary-Dallas series, just because the staunch defensive, standpoints and the goaltending is just going to be the highlight of that series. But as far as the Pins and the Rangers go, it's hard for me not to take the over. They both have such extreme offensive powerhouses. I mean, you've got the Breadman on the Rangers. You've got Sidney Crosby, who arguably is one of, if not the best player in the NHL at any given time. I know it's going to probably rub some people the wrong way, but I mean, he's Sid the Kid for a reason. So I think the Rangers are a safe bet tonight, but I think overall you want to take the over in this series because I think they're going to put up some goals for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rangers bounce back. I think they know how to win games, right? Just for -160, that price as a straight bet doesn't do it for me today, but, maybe a little hockey parlay or something. Got some comments rolling in here. Merrill Coleman, let's go. Got to love that. Das Diggity, how we doing? Yo, Tanner, sup, homie? Hey, keep trying to hit those big parlays, Das Diggity. Keep trying to hit them. And then BP311 rolling in here. Rangers and Panthers money line. So, let's talk about the Capitals and the Panthers. Capitals stole one on Florida. Now, I usually say Minnesota is like a fraudulent hockey team. Like you said, they don't play well in the playoffs, right? But at the same time, when I said that and I posted that on TikTok, a lot of people came at me and said, hey, the Panthers are the most fraudulent team in hockey. And I'm like, I don't know if I believe that. If you look at their offense and you look at how they played this year, it's hard to say that. Now, what's your take on Florida? And was game 1 just an absolute fluke?
I don't think it was a fluke. I mean, you still have a lot of guys on that Capitals team that won the Stanley Cup. They know what it takes to get there. Now, that being said, I think on paper, Florida is the most talented team in the playoffs right now. I mean, you don't go out and get a guy like Claude Giroux if you don't expect to make a massive run. So it'll be really interesting. I think the Panthers do ultimately take this series. I don't think it's going to be as easy as we saw in Game 1. I think it's going to take 6 games, but I do think Florida finally advances to the next round. I don't think they're a pretender, honestly. I think that they've got enough to do what it takes. I think Bobrovsky's playing a little bit better. I think last season that was a big issue for them, was paying a guy like Bobrovsky and then having a Spencer Knight kind of kid come in, play lights out. Now Spencer Knight has kind of regressed a little bit. I think that's done a lot of mental gain for Bobrovsky, because it's going to allow him to kind of refocus and be that guy again for Florida. So Florida, when they want to turn it on, they're going to turn it on. And I think they realize, okay, this is make or break for us, because we have a very small window and we got to get in the house and win the cup. So yeah, I think we're going to look at a 6-game series, but I think ultimately Florida's going to take it. But obviously huge kudos to Ovechkin for the season he's had. He's going to catch Gretzky in the next couple seasons. So it's just phenomenal for us to be watching one of the best, if not the best goal scorer of all time. But unfortunately, this season is going to end in the first round for the Capitals. I'm thinking Panthers in 6 on this one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was shocked the other night. I think Panthers cover on the puck line today too. I mean, -1.5 at +100 is a pretty good deal betting wise, especially. Yeah, coming off a loss, bouncing back. We've seen it in the NBA playoffs. We've seen it in the NHL playoffs. Game 2, a lot of teams come out and fight hard. So I'm going to go with the team that lost usually. Let's see here. Got some comments. I'd be so close, Tanner. Keep it up, Das. Keep it up. And then always 1 or 2 legs off in a 25 legger. Well, you know what? Listen to Jeff. You might get it. You might get that hit. You might get those second legs that you're missing there. So we'll move on to the next game now. As you said, I didn't watch the Nashville Colorado game because I'm like, I don't think it's going to be a game. But on my show the other day, a lot of people were coming in and say, hey, Nashville puck line +1.5 is the absolute move today. I'm sure a lot of them are watching on TikTok right now. And that obviously wasn't the case. Now, I have the over in this game. I think over 6.5 or -120 is a price I'm willing to pay, because they've gone over 3 times in their past 4 games, right? But at the same time, too, does Nashville have a chance to compete tonight at all?
No, not at all. Your goaltender, I believe, is still out for one more game. And as we've seen, there are some really solid backup options. And Nashville has a decent one, but the problem is, and I shouldn't say backup, I think we're in a day and age, unless you're Vasilevsky and the Tampa Bay Lightning, you really just have a 1A, 1B style system. But we're talking about the Colorado Avalanche. Not only are they pissed off, they're really good and they're pissed off. Nate McKinnon has had a lot of issues, I think, with his attitude. But I think this is the time of year where this is the best thing for him to have an attitude. And then Cal McCarr is arguably one of the most graceful, fantastic, and fastest skaters we've seen as a defenseman in a long time. And that's come from me watching Miro Heiskanen and seeing Cal McCarr on the ice. It just makes Heiskanen even look like, I mean, it's hard to describe how good Cal McCarr is. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Nashville fan. I never have been. I don't know if I ever will be. I just don't see it working for them, especially when you don't have your starting goaltender. And then you have to think Colorado at any given time can put up 7 goals like they did in Game 1. I don't see them putting up any less than 4 today. But Nashville they'll stick around as far as the stat sheet goes. I think they'll put up a couple of goals, much like they did in the 7-2 loss. But I don't see them having nearly enough offensive firepower. I don't think they have as much grit as Colorado has. Colorado can go out and scrap with the best of them if they really want to. I think it's you look at a guy like Connor McDavid and you say, man, if he was just a little bit tougher. I think that's kind of what we're getting with Nate McKinnon. Nate McKinnon is tired of getting pushed around. He's tired of getting bumped out of the playoffs. He wants to solidify himself as one of the top, if not one of the best skaters and players in the NHL. I think it's going to be Calgary and Colorado in the Western Conference Final. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see Colorado sweep, and it's the only sweep we see. So,
yeah, definitely. That's how you know this guy's legit. He's going against his own team, the Dallas Stars. It's got to pain you to do that, though, a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. It does. But I mean, if you've watched even just one game of Dallas Stars hockey, you know we're a one-line team.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys on that line is Joe Pavelski, who is one of the older guys on the team at around, I think, 37. So now, don't get me wrong. I love the Stars. I think they've got a lot of potential. They got a lot of young guys. And I don't want to go too deep into it because there is a very bipolar kind of stance on it. It's a small divide because there's so few that support him, but head coach Rick Bowness inherited this team from Jim Montgomery, who is now an assistant coach with the St. Louis Blues. But Rick Bowness is not a guy that's going to be able to run this team to the Stanley Cup Finals that he builds himself. Let's just put it like that. So he's kind of playing with house money here in Dallas. I don't think he has what it takes. I think we're going to see him leave after this season and retire. But the Stars have a lot of work to do. If they can take this series, it feels very reminiscent of the bubble where everyone picked the Flames to win. And ultimately the Stars went on to beat them in the first round. Then they went on to beat the most talented teams in the West with Vegas and Colorado, and eventually, unfortunately, fell short in the Stanley Cup final. But yeah, I love the Stars. Don't love these late start times here in the Central Time Zone. It's even worse for you on the Eastern Time Zone. We know they're probably starting at 10 p.m. It's unreal, but it is what it is. That being said, love my team, love my Stars. I just don't think this is the year.
Yeah, I got you. I have the under 5.5 in that game. Now, do you think the Stars can hang in there enough to cover plus 1.5? Because the juice is minus 132 on that. And I mean, that's a pretty appealing bet. Same thing with like a Nashville tonight, plus 2.5 at minus 140. I mean, there's a lot of people that are be willing to pay that price to have 2 goals of protection there. So I want to get both your opinions on that. First of all, we can start with the Stars and then go back to Nashville.
It's hard for me. Stars are good. One of those teams that they're good for one explosive game. Part of me feels like if they can get one past Markstrom tonight, it's going to be one of those games where they put up like 3 or 4, and then they don't do it again for the rest of the playoffs, however long they're in it. I hope I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I don't feel good about that one. I don't feel good about it because I feel like this is like one of those games where it's either going to go super haywire and they're going to lose probably 5-2, 5-1, or they're going to go absolutely banana lands, bonkers, and go up like 4-1, and then ultimately win it, 5-1 with an empty netter at the end. So it's hard for me. Nashville, I say, is a little bit safer of a bet, but I don't know if I can feel comfortable with that on the Dallas end.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those dog puck lines are always tough. They look appealing sometimes to the juice, but they are tough. So we got some comments rolling in here. Let's see. Gloria, Red Sox broke my heart yesterday, Tanner. We'll talk about the Red Sox in a few minutes here. I can't spend time talking about that right now. I'm very angry at that franchise. I'm running back the Preds plus 1.5 there. Yeah, BP 311. He was high on him. Flames can beat the Avs and will if necessary. Okay, but he likes Predators tonight. Das Diggy coming in here. I need a good 14 parlay in baseball. We'll get that here in a few minutes. I'm hoping this is a high-scoring one. I grabbed the over in Dallas-Calgary. You are a brave man because let's talk about this for a minute. I took the over in game 1. I was thinking back to that April 21st game where it was a 4-2 game. I'm like, Dallas can get 2 in the net tonight. Calgary should put up 4. Johnny Gaudreau should have a big game. He was kind of nowhere to be found, so I'm going to go under tonight. You said take the under in this game, but you're always big on overs, as you said in the playoffs. So, why are you leaning under here, knowing the Stars could be somewhat explosive?
Because I think the explosiveness of the Dallas Stars is more of like a boring game for some other franchises. Again, it sounds like I'm knocking my own team, but you watch them for 82 games and you see the ups and downs, and you realize this is not a potent offensive or a high potency style offensive team. This is a grinder team. This is a team that's going to skate with you back and forth and really try to beat you in the neutral zone. Puck possession is really big to them, up until Rick Bowness decides to put on the dump and chase, which happens more often than not, unfortunately. But that being said, when you've got guys like Jake Ottinger and Markstrom in net, you always want to look for low-scoring affairs. Markstrom has had one of the most phenomenal seasons of his entire career, and I've always said that the Flames are so close every time they make it to the playoffs. They just need some solid goaltending. So if Markstrom can come off of a game where he gave up 0 goals, now granted, the Stars only had 16 shots in that first game. That's about normal for the Stars, sadly, when it comes to those kind of games. But if the Stars can put up 20 to 25 shots, I can see them sneaking one past Markstrom, maybe 2. But with Ottinger's on his game, like we saw, he only gave up 1. These guys are coming off extremely fantastic goaltending performances on both ends. So that's why it's kind of hard for me to bet the over in this series, just because I know for a fact that both teams defensively can support their goaltending when they want to. And when those goaltenders are on, they're on. And it's going to be really tough to put up multiple goals on both ends of the ice. Now, obviously, with that being said, it's the biggest thing is if someone does go out of the gate and really kind of blow up with a 3 or 4 goal win, we're going to see it at the mercy of a 0 or 1 goal, opposing. So that's why it's kind of hard for me to bet the over on these, is because I see one team really performing well and the other one just kind of like, kind of going quiet offensively. But it's definitely going to be interesting. And this is a game 2 kind of sets the tone for the rest of the series for a lot of these series. So it'll be interesting to see if the Stars can battle back. If they can get a win here, I will be more than thrilled. I think coming back to Dallas, that does them a ton of favors. But yeah, it's just hard for me with this team and and the Calgary Flames too to bet the over, because I know how staunch they can be defensively, and those goaltenders just, when they're on, they just don't give anything up. So.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of comments on TikTok saying 5.5 so low. I'll take the over, but I fell victim to that the other night, and I'm not going to make the mistake again. Last question for you, Jeff. Here, we look at the future markets for the Stanley Cup. Avs are first at plus 300, Calgary plus 600, Panthers plus 650, Carolina plus 700, then Toronto at plus 1,000. Those are the top 5 teams. I mean, out of all those teams, I think the most value is on Toronto, obviously at plus 1,000. But if you had to give me a winner right now, someone to take, who would it be?
On the Western Conference side, I really feel like if Calgary can continue the rhythm they have with their goaltending and take this first series against Dallas, I think Calgary has a team that is built for the playoffs and the Stanley Cup. So, like I said, I see Calgary and Colorado in the Western Conference Finals. I've picked Calgary in most of those brackets that I've done. So I'm going to have to go with Calgary. On the Eastern Conference side, man, it's really tough. If Carolina does in fact take this first round, especially if they somehow pull off the 4-game sweep, Carolina has been knocking on that door for a very long time. And I think that this might be the year. Now, it'll be interesting because we saw that there was a goaltending injury yesterday with Antti Ranta, and he, may not be available for the next game. So, it'll be interesting to see what the goaltending situation is with Carolina. But it may not be a safe bet, but if Toronto can make it out of this first round against Tampa Bay at plus 1,000, you put a little bit of, change on that, you might come out looking real smart and feeling real rich after that, because, man, I don't know. I don't know what it is about this team. They've just got a good mix of veterans, young guys, and Premier League players. So, if Austin Matthews can get hot, if Campbell can continue to play well in net, man, I really think that they have an opportunity to go on and play really well into the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, this could all backfire and they could become victim of the first round again. But I think the safest bet for the Eastern Conference might be Carolina, and then on the flip side, Calgary is going to be your safest bet with the Western Conference.
Yeah, people are not high on the Leafs. Leafs won't make it out of the first round. They choke every year. That's what people are saying in the chat. We'll see. Yep. We'll see. I mean, they got to go through Vasilevsky, so it's not going to be super easy. But Jeff, really appreciate you joining the show today on May 5th here. Now, if people want to, check out Whatahockey Podcast, if I'm saying Whata, it's Whatahockey Whataburger, right?
Yep. Nailed it.
Okay. I'm a Northeast guy, as I said. So, Whatahockey Podcast, if they want to check that out, where can they find you? How many days a week you doing it? All that good stuff.
So we usually release one episode a week. We're looking to do a couple more here, interviews left and right, just kind of, freestyling it when we can. But we usually release an episode every Thursday. Today is Thursday, Cinco de Mayo, so we did release an episode this morning. We had the emergency goalie that played for the Ducks against the Stars in that last game last Friday, Tom Hodges. Really great interview. We did it live from a bar here in Richardson, Texas, called Northside Draft House. Had a blast talking with him. Really interesting take to see how his day went leading up to it, because when you're an e-bug in the NHL, you have no idea when the day comes that you're going to be in that situation. And he's only the third one, I think, in the past 10 years to be used, if not longer. Obviously with David Ayers and Scott Foster of the Blackhawks. So really cool take to hear what he had to say. But you can find us on Instagram, on Twitter, at Whatahockey. We have a Facebook, Whatahockey. We have a LinkedIn. We don't use it very often because, we're kind of semi-professional, and I guess that's a professional website. But you can find us on there. We're on YouTube at Whatahockey. Anytime we do a live recording, we always post the video on there. So yeah, really want to say thank you to having me on here, to 3-Team Parlay for letting me be a part of this, and hopefully we'll be doing a lot more work here in the future.
Yeah, awesome. So when I post this, I'll post our show, obviously, but I'll clip this interview and then I'll link all his social handles below so you guys can check those out. So Jeff, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. And we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Awesome, Tanner. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Thank you.